The following is a presentation of the Broadband Universe, brought to you in part by Vitruvi, the end-to-end GIS-based construction management platform that connects asset owners, operators, general contractors, and subcontractors for unmatched project control and collaboration. Manage every aspect of your telecommunications or utility infrastructure construction program with Vitruvi. Build faster, reduce costs, improve quality. Book your demo today on vitruvisoftware.com to see how we can help you build at scale. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Broadband Universe podcast. I'm Craig Corbin. My guest today, my good friend Craig Settles, the broadband and telehealth industry analyst, presenter, author, and host of the Gigabit Nation talk show. Mr. Settles, welcome to the Broadband Universe.
How are you? And I am happy to be here today.
It is a privilege to talk. It has been way too long since
Yep.
we've had a chance to visit. And of course, typically, as always, telehealth is part of the conversations that we have. And so looking forward to diving into that today. And of course, telehealth services and the problems that they solve in healthcare. It's sort of an all-encompassing term that describes the remote delivery of healthcare services, including medical information and healthcare education via telecommunications systems. And of course, today, as we've gotten through a global pandemic like COVID-19 and a number of other natural disasters, telehealth technologies more essential than ever, and they've become far more relevant now that the federal government emphasizes using telehealth as a public health emergency tool during crises. So, having said that, just to sort of set the stage for the conversation, for those that might not be familiar with all that it encompasses, because you have multiple modalities that are under the telehealth umbrella, give us that bird's eye view of telehealth.
Okay, so we look at three options for delivering telehealth. One is right now, right here, emergency often, but just the basic, I dial in to my doctor or medical professional. He examines, he does what he does and what she does, and we're done, maybe a half hour later. So it basically takes the doctor visitor, the doctor encounter, and you deliver it instantly through having a setup similar to us, where you have a video streaming. The doctor has a similar kind of technology, and you're able to communicate here and now, right? The second area is store and forward. So I might go to a clinic where the doctor said, okay, go to this clinic, get your blood drawn, and we're going to analyze all of this later, right? And then we'll have a teleconference later where we'll talk about the results of your tests and so forth, right? Well, there's a range of various kinds of store and forward activities. And then the third is what I call the passive telehealth, where you're making medical and healthcare information available for people to download or to go to their library or even just access from their home. But there may be, just all kinds of activity. The National Library of Medicine actually funds a number of programs such as that, where they're basically saying we're going to take, technology, software, maybe do a little bit of artificial intelligence to help the delivery mode, so that people can see what what the medical folks are talking about, but it may be in some form that is made understandable for the person who's not a techie or
Right.
a health person, right?
And that's an interesting point, Craig, when you talk about the fact that there are many who are in need of availing themselves of telehealth, telemedicine opportunities. The education of the population, if you will, is so important. And I know that we want to get to that, but given the framework of those three primary modalities, I guess first of all, that's extremely important to be able to differentiate between the various types of telehealth. When we talk about real time, obviously there is a technology component of that, and given the fact that we are now in an age of expanding the world of broadband, trying to bridge that digital divide, talk about the component of telehealth and how it is part of that growth.
Well, you cannot have telehealth without broadband, right? Now, maybe I should rephrase that. It is best to have broadband, but there are places where that's not available, so you can maybe have to do some sort of telephone exchange with your doctor, and and then maybe a little bit, maybe that's not quite telehealth, but it points to the problem that we have that is also being addressed by billions of dollars, like billions of dollars, which is getting more broadband into places where the people are. Because often when you track who has good health care, it is almost always related to who has the money, right? And if you look at the broadband and who has broadband or not have broadband, you have the same issue. The people who need broadband the most are those people who are low income. They're in rural areas. They're in low, high density problem areas. In urban areas, you have veterans. You have seniors. The NTIA has labeled different markets, if you will, and all of those markets have some sort of broadband and telehealth need. Right? They may not understand all of this yet, but the thing is, you can track need often between broadband and telehealth and income.
A couple of things that you touched on, Craig, in those remarks. The fact that it's not limited to rural residents. And I think that probably is a misconception by many when they talk about, oh, well, it's just the folks out in the countries or up in the mountains that have need of telehealth. Without question, when you talk about high density urban areas, there is just as great a need. And without question, I think you would agree that the pandemic highlighted the need when being able to travel as freely as we are used to was not available. Telehealth was extremely important in big cities.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at some of the main problems that people have in the rural areas, right? Distance, so often referred to, in the rural area, it may take 2-3 hours to get to your doctor, right? You can be dead by then. I mean,
sure, literally
speaking. And but in the urban areas, I don't live in a particularly low income area, right? But because of my stroke, I can't drive, right? So that gives me the option of having public transportation, right? Public transportation opened up this whole area of, it takes an hour to get to my doctor. Right? If you are in an area where you have really bad public transportation, it may be 2 hours, 2.5 hours, right? So the same problem of distance and time and getting to the doctor is there in the urban areas, right? If you look at the hospital closings, right, we talk about the rural areas or where the hospitals are leaving town, right? But at the same time, the urban areas suffer from the same problem. Like just about a month ago, Atlanta, one of the big
Wellstar.
hospitals that predominantly
Yeah.
serves low-income communities, right? They just basically said we're out of the business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. In fact,
And
they finally closed their doors this week as we are taping, and that is such a huge part of the conversation. And of course, the benefit, you being in the Bay Area, of course, healthcare on the West Coast typically is the leader in healthcare development that then filters across the country. So that provides you, though, with even greater ability to access the highest level of healthcare. Talk about that.
right, so it's sort of a misnomer, I think, of some sort when people talk about the Bay Area, because we have Silicon Valley,
Right.
right? All of these programs and literal programs and software programs and all of that, and we're supposed to be this enlightened area because of our technology, but at the same time we have just you know neighborhood after neighborhood in various parts in Oakland and San Francisco and so forth, where people can barely get enough money for the rent, and so the able to deal with food on the table and getting a health checkup on a regular basis. This is very difficult in this area. So we have extreme need, but we also have great technology, and it sort of points out the problem that what money and income and economic status and so forth is a determinant. And even when you have the technology, you don't necessarily solve the problems.
Right.
And this is a point that needs to be made as we try to get billions of dollars into in various communities, rural and urban, right? And there is an assumption of certain amount where people say, okay, once we get this done, once we get this technology in place, all our problems are over. We are not going to have that. It isn't, because as one person told me a couple of days ago, we have the issue of if you're trying to struggle to get food on the table, right? Your problem and your focus is on getting that food to those people that depend on you, right? So to have someone say, "Oh, you will get this technology here, and we'll be able to do great things," that's fine, but that's not the reality of the person in need. That
Right.
person has a different hierarchical need of things that have to be dealt with, and
Absolutely.
so you, as a bureaucrat or as a policymaker and so forth, you have to understand that issue,
Sure.
right? The other issue is if you take people who have never had um, broadband, even maybe
Yeah.
a computer,
Right.
right? They may use a smartphone because they don't have a computer, right? And so if you take this person and say, boom, you now have broadband,
Hmm.
right? Well, what's the person supposed to do with this?
It's still a question of digital literacy, and that's the perfect segue to my next question, and we'll get to in just a moment. You are watching the Broadband Universe podcast, brought to you by Lit Communities. Light up your community. You deserve better internet. By Vetro Fiber Map, radically simpler fiber management. By On Track, proven leader in connectivity. And by Vitruvi, build faster, reduce costs, improve quality. My guest today, Craig Settles, broadband and telehealth industry analyst. And Craig, you made mention just a moment ago of the fact that the availability of broadband when it changes for families is a big part of that. I'm curious what you are seeing in your role as an industry analyst in both the world of broadband and in telehealth. What are you seeing become reality from the standpoint of providers across the nation with all of the tremendous investment that is available now?
Um, People need to understand, as a policy person or a provider of either telehealth or broadband, is that you're dealing with populations that won't necessarily adopt to the technology, right? And and this has been time has been a problem for the last couple of decades, right? Where people say, well, we're going to give you this stuff for free. Why aren't you using it?
Right.
Not using it because you don't understand the particulars, right? All you gotta do is think about an elderly aunt or uncle who grew up in the Vietnam War era, and and they are accustomed to doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
Now you're going to say, here, you're going to now have your doctor on your screen. Why?
Right. Right.
Why? Right? It's not, how much. It's
Right.
why are you going to do this?
Right.
Right? And there are people, and I think probably in both the rural and the urban area, but definitely in the rural areas, where the relationship between the doctor and the patient it's more than just a transaction where we just spend some money for.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a person who may have delivered your child.
Yes.
Those are the people who have helped you when you were sick, who helped your elderly folks when they were sick. Right? And so when someone just brings up the hint that they're going to replace that, well, you're not going to replace that person. You're basically trying to make the doctor's life easier and be able to deliver services, more efficiently, right? But that isn't what the person, the older person thinks about.
And that's a matter of perception.
Take away
Right.
why?
Yeah. 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 Well, and
And
well, just one quick thought, if I could interject. One of the three modalities that we talked about, that third one, the remote patient monitoring, is such an important part of telehealth and perhaps even more widely used than the other two. Talk about that, if you would.
so the remote access is a big thing with people with chronic illnesses, especially if you're low income, because you may not have a job that gives you time to go deal with your health care issues, right? So you've got people who who can't get to the doctor fast enough, easy enough, right? And what you have to look at is the value of telehealth and what you really want to present to your patients and people in the average folk. You can't continue to work this way,
Right.
especially as you start to get older, right? So you are looking at, telehealth as a way to make things easier. And that's what you're trying to market. You're
Right.
trying to market the ease of which healthcare is delivered. And then the second benefit is the person doesn't have to live. They don't have to get to a assisted living facility. You
Sure.
know, and that is a big deal, right? I've lived here for 50, 80 years, but it's hard to get out and get a ride or some sort of paratransit service or what have you, right? So there are like all these issues with getting to the doctor, right? And all of that says, oh, well, you need to go to, the old folks home, as they would call back in the
Sure.
day.
Sure.
And people, they dread that. They dread that, which is not going to help their health issues
Sure.
much, because because you don't have that healthy mindset, because all you're thinking about is, I got to leave,
Right.
And
Sure.
so to reverse that, you want to say, well, we will keep these folks in their homes longer.
Yep.
People who have to deal with, working two jobs and they can't get time to go to the doctor, those folks are being helped.
Sure.
Right?
One thing too, and that I wanted to ask, I'm curious from a best practices standpoint, from your perspective in dealing with so many people, organizations across the country. What are you seeing develop of late, if you will, in telehealth as far as best practices go?
I think people are heavily. Let's back it up a little bit. I think what you need to do, because telehealth is such a vast set of activities and so forth, it is easier to say, let's do one thing, right? So in an urban area, I might say, let's just do telehealth to record people's blood pressure when they're at the barbershop, right? That's simple. It's easy. It's not threatening.
Easy. Yeah.
Barbershop is a place that, other than the church, is the biggest part of the lifestyle.
That's where you congregate.
American folks and Hispanic folks and so
Sure.
forth, right?
Sure.
So you make it easy so that people can say, "Oh, this is great," and it's not threatening. And like some people will find out that their blood pressure is so high that they need to just forget about the barbershop, the haircut. They need to go to the doctor, right?
And
Now, in a rural setting, right,
sure.
there's a company called VistaBeam, right, and they're an ISP, they're a wireless ISP, and their philosophy is, yeah, we got to get the technology there, but people have needs for resources. They need to have their check on time. If they're in Social Security. So what they recommend is creating centers where people can go, but non-threatening kind of a situation, right? And so that people can understand this telehealth thing in this comfortable environment that they're comfortable in, that they're good with, right?
I like that.
And so their philosophy now is, okay, yes, we sell the connectivity, but we also have staff who are trained in, with digital literacy. Some of the people just deal with, I'm not getting my mail. I'm not getting this and that being done. So not only am I worrying about my, my computer starting, right? But I got these other alternatives, and someone
that.
might say, "Well, that's not our business, right? You can't make money on that, right?"
But that's part of serving your customers. That's a big part of that holistic
Yes.
approach. And I'm curious. So much to cover on this topic. We could do a series of episodes, and so I'm looking forward already to our next one. But as we begin to wind this down, final thought from you with respect to the future of telehealth. I know that you are, without question, the eternal optimist with regard to where this is going.
Right.
But what do you see 5 years, 10 years down the road?
I think that what we will find is there are different ways to use telehealth. And what you've got to do on the front end now is understand what these issues are and what technologies are coming down the road. Like we're talking about artificial intelligence, smart cities, smart, everything.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And then how do I present that so that people are comfortable with it, right?
Yeah.
So for the next 5 years, we've got to be in the comfort, business. We have got to make people comfortable with telehealth so they will accept it and will make sense. It'll make sense for them.
I like that.
That's what we got to do. Like I said, in this next 5-6 years.
Well, and I tell you what, I appreciate the fact that you have been and will continue to be one of the leaders in that regard. And so greatly appreciate the passion that you bring to this, because it is so important and it will only grow in importance down the road. And thank you for all you have done in this realm, and looking forward to circling back with you in the not too distant future to see what else is happening and developing in the world of telehealth. Craig, it is so great to catch up with you. Can't thank you enough for being with me today.
No problem. This has been a great time.
On behalf of Craig, thanks so much for letting us be a part of your day. We'll see you next time right here on the Broadband Universe. So long, everyone.